What's up guys, this is another episode of CVR POV. This episode's slightly different to what I normally do, and I'm just going to show you how I apply some of the techniques what I show on this channel to make money in the actual real world. So this was a job from about 3 years ago, and this guy contacted me. He's a local lad, he was around the corner. I think I'd done a job for him before, maybe a bumper corner spray or something like that. And he contacted me, he said he wanted to sell his car, little Fiesta. It was scratched absolutely everywhere, every single panel. So he was going to get it painted, but the body shop let him down. He really wanted to sell it, he wanted to move it on quick. He called me in for an emergency job and says, can you just try and sort out as many areas as possible? So that's exactly what I did. So I decided to start here on this door. It was quite a bad scuff, so I just started to sand it down with some sandpaper. I noticed at this point there was a scratch had been touched in there where the arrow is, so I got some 2000 paper out, which I was going to get out anyway to start refining the 1500 I'd just used, and I've just sped that up, but that's me sanding that bit down. I've also started to sand where somebody had touched a scratch in previously. A quick check once it's dried, that I can still see there's a little bit of a raised scar area from the previous touch-up. That's fine, it's probably just somewhere that somebody's gone a little bit too excitable with some touch-up. There's perhaps nothing underneath it. Now I'm just buffing in some compound. We didn't use 3000 on this. Time is a priority with this one. I've only allowed 2 to 3 hours max on it, so we haven't really got time to mess about refining everything to every last detail. Just doing a quick visual inspection there. If you look in the reflection, you can see how fast I'm working. I don't really know which bit to start on first, and do I finish this bit or do I move on to something else? Obviously I'm trying to plan the whole car out as I'm doing it, because there's a lot of work to get done, and I've literally only got about 2 to 3 hours on this one. The client was keen to get the car moved on. I think there was someone coming that night. It was a nice warm day, so I just took the opportunity to do a few touch-ins of some deeper chips. This would allow them to dry, obviously, while I'm doing other bits on the car. So the next thing I decided to tackle was this front bumper corner. When I first looked at it, I actually thought, probably not going to get much done on this, it probably needs a respray. There's some really big scratches, lots of different scratches, and they look quite deep, so I decided to pull out the rub and buff method. Now this is a method and technique that I've pioneered over the years. I've also done lots of content on it, so after you've watched this video, if you haven't seen it before, go and check out some of my other videos. So it was out with the cutting compound again, and we're just applying a bit more to the bumper. Now you'll notice that that is actually a cordless drill with a buffing pad and a buffing backing plate attachment on it. I can only presume I've decided to pull that out for this video because despite the immense amount of pressure I was under, time and everything else, budget and all that kind of thing, I was probably trying to make a YouTube video on it because I thought if I pull off this bumper with it, it'd make some good content. So I'm just working the cutting compound in around the areas that I've used the rub and buff method. I'm checking as I go along, making sure that the bodywork still looks okay. I've not polished too far, but I've polished enough. So straight after a bit of an inspection, I was starting to work on this wing. I decided that the scratch that was on the wing wasn't bad enough for the rub and buff method, and that I could probably sand it out with some 1500 followed by 2000. There we go with the 2000. The 2000 is just refining the area that I've used the 1500 on. I've done several videos on wet sanding. Again, if you want to check them out after this video, then I suggest you do so. Probably should have done this bit before I actually started sanding the panel, but like I say, I was rushing. It's just to protect the edges. I think the bumper was just sticking out slightly. It's always a good idea to be cautious and aware of adjoining panels, especially if they're not completely lined up. You don't want to catch them with the sandpaper or the buffer. So it looks like I ditched the drill at this point, and I've got the Milwaukee cordless polisher out. This one's a rotary polisher. As you can see, it's making light work of the Ford paint and my wet sanding marks. So after that area was buffed, it's time for an inspection just to see what kind of progress we've made, if there's any wet sanding marks left, what the area looks like, have I removed the scratch. By the looks of it, it was pretty successful with one hit, so I'm quite happy with that. As you can see, I've just shown a quick before section of the video, and as you can see, massive improvement. So at this point I decided to move round to the other side of the car. So there was a nasty scuff on the door. I looked at it, I thought it's borderline sanding, shall we just try the rub and buff method on it? So I applied a very small amount of paint and rubbed it in with my finger, as you can see. Then we're back out with the compound again. So I've got the drill out again at this point. I suppose it's good because it shows that you don't need, any really expensive, complicated machines. I'm using several different types of buffers in this video. I think even in the next section I'm using just a cheap buffer off Amazon. Doesn't have to be Milwaukee, it can be anything that spins. So it looks like there was still some scratches visible in the area, so I decided to do the rub and buff method again in the same area, just to try and tackle the deeper ones. Bit more compound, bit more polishing. I usually only recommend doing the rub and buff method a maximum of 2 times, because you are removing sort of clear coat material around the area, you're not just removing just the excess. So there's a little before and after. You can't argue with the results, that's another panel saved. I have received a bit of hate about this method in some other videos, saying it doesn't work or someone hasn't had good results. Usually that's down to it's not the right kind of damage, it's not the right kind of situation. Obviously, I've said before, darker colours work best, solid colours also work well. If it's a pearl white or a silver, it doesn't work as well. That's not my fault, it's just the way it is. As you can see in this video, right before your eyes, it's working very well. I'm doing a couple of applications in each area. I can see that the scratches haven't been worked on before, so it's working a treat, to be honest with you. And this is also saving the client an absolute fortune, and at the same time it's going to make me fantastic money. For a couple of hours work, you can't really moan about coming out with £400 or $500, whatever the exchange rate is at the time. I'm working fast, but you know what, I'm enjoying myself. It's kind of work that, not that there's no risk, but it was my favourite kind of job because you can make maximum impact to the customer. He had originally budgeted, I think it was a couple of £1,000 to get the bits painted on the car. It was also going to have a full machine polish at a body shop at full cost. So what I'm doing here is I'm just quickly taping off some of the rubbers and plastics, because I also went round the car really quickly with the rotary polisher and the G360 paste. I know people will be watching it, particularly detailers or anybody that's been involved with detailing their own car or had the car detailed or anything to do with the industry. What the hell is he doing? He's slapping polish everywhere. Look, this is a different type of work. Maximum impact, minimum amount of time. Maximum income for me, maximum results for the client. I actually think that there's a massive gap in the market for this kind of work. Massive gap. That's why I do a lot of these videos, to try and help people. So one of the final things which is always worth doing is a very basic touch up of any white marks that are left on the car. This can impact the overall look of the car almost as much as everything else what we've just done for the last couple of hours. So we're just going to have a quick look around the car. We're coming to the end of the video now. These are all the areas that were severely damaged, as you could see earlier on in the video. Scuffed, scratched, chipped, everything going off. The paintwork was dull, swirl marks. As you can see now, the car looks completely different, and it's literally took a couple of hours. So I'm tired at this point. As you can imagine, it was the end of the day anyway. I think I started it at 3, I finished it at 5:30. Just I packed my tools up, so I was probably 2 hours 45 minutes from arriving at the job, getting the work done, packing my tools back, and then getting off to go home and have a beer basically, because I'd earned one. It was red hot that day, which it was hard to work in, but it did help with drying times and stuff like that. It meant I could get round the car fairly quick. So the best part of the job wasn't actually the money. It was a really good earner, to be honest with you. The best part of the job was the customer came home and he was absolutely over the moon with the results. He couldn't believe it. He thought I'd painted several panels on it. Obviously I explained I hadn't, and we kept to the same price. And the best of all is he sold the car that night. The bloke came, couple of hour journey, said he loved the car, drove it back to wherever he came from. Massive result. And with that, that is the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've found it good content, great value. I hope you've learnt maybe something, and if you could just please hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, press like, press the notification button, please leave a comment below. Everything helps. I want to keep bringing you more content. God bless. Peace.